Welcome to the Love Mondays podcast. My goal is to bring inspiring and authentic guests on the show who could have a profound impact on my viewers and listeners. They can help everyone love their Mondays and be truly excited and intentional about the way they live life every single day. My guest today is Dave Lahey. He's the founder and CEO of Predictive Success. He has also worked for Microsoft for 8 years. In addition to his fantastic business story, today we will talk about his heroic personal journey. It is an amazing story that I think Dave is still writing. Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, Ron. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation today.
Fantastic. So David, I always start with my first question is, how can you help people love their Mondays more? A lot of people sleepwalk through life,
Sure.
maybe not thrilled with what they do. What advice would you give people in that regard?
Well, I think that the best advice is to get yourself into a job that makes you comfortable, allows you to be in a job that suits your behavior. I mean, we're in the world of analytics. Our company is really all about putting people into the right job. They used to say right seat on the bus, but I like to say a job that allows you to be the very best next person of yourself so that you are jazzed and engaged. Nothing worse than coming on Sunday nights, getting the Monday weebies about, oh my God, I got to go back to work. That's no fun.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many people have that, right? So I love how you said, hey, something you're jazzed about, something you're excited about, and tell me a little bit more about instead of right seat on the bus. Can you go a little deeper there?
Yeah, a lot of times, in my travels that I, was at Microsoft for a long time, and we started back at Microsoft, and the passion from Frank Clegg was to create an enterprise team that could go and work with the banks to get the banks to trust Microsoft, that we could be more than just, selling disks. We could be true partners. And so we brought in a wonderful team that had the right behaviors, that were very persuasive, that enjoyed working together. And we really created a dream team. We loved Mondays because it was an opportunity to do more of what we cared and loved the most, which was interacting with people, bringing new solutions, building better companies. And it was a mission that we were on that this suited us so well that Mondays were exciting. And I think a lot of times, and now I'm in the business of predictive analytics, and particularly here at Predictive Success. And we really want to build better bosses, and better bosses, in my mind, create better Mondays. And what I mean by that is they put people in jobs that suit them behaviorally. Too many times across Canada and the United States where we have employees who are in jobs that don't suit them behaviorally. They took them because they may have to make a mortgage payment or a BMW payment. And that is draining on them. And, how bad can it be when you hate your job, you go home and maybe you kick the dog and maybe you yell at the kids and maybe, your argument with your spouse? What we believe is that you build a better boss, you build a better ecosystem, better work, better world. And then Mondays become joy days.
Yeah, no, absolutely love that, right? Building better bosses and the ripple effect you have from either a bad boss or a terrible boss is huge, right? To your kids, to your families, to the sports team you coach. It's just a massive ripple effect.
Yeah, it is. And, sometimes we were in the wrong jobs and there's nothing worse than that. I mean, recently my son became a very successful attorney, a lawyer, went to Queens, got a JD MBA. A very wide, persuasive pattern in the PI terms, and then was hired by a firm on Bay Street and had a terrible boss, just a really bully partner. I won't name the firm, and was just terrible. He was paid a lot of money, well over $250,000, but he hated it. Then along came another company, Mintz Partners in New York, and they hired a bunch of these lawyers and paid them even more money. But again, the behavior didn't match the model. And my son's case, he was put into very detailed, very methodical work when he should have been out there in a business development role for the firm and meeting with customers. And so he quit, and a number of the kids have quit. There's a very high turnover rate amongst associates in law firms because they put people in the wrong seats on the bus, and they bribe them with money. But money is not the number one reason that people quit. It's, does the job do something for me? The number one reason that Gen Z people are quitting in roles across Canada, and probably the number one reason they hate Mondays, is my boss doesn't care about me. And so paying attention to where you place your employees will prevent, the bad Monday syndrome in your organizations.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to park the predictive success for a minute, and I really want you to share your personal story. And I think maybe start to, hey, there's a day you felt a bit of a sore throat, and I'd love you to tell that story.
I'm happy to share it. I mean, 4 years ago this month, I was in pretty good shape. I had a trainer 3 days a week. My business was doing great at predictive success, but I had a sore throat, so I went in to see my GP, Dr. Eric Montero. He's a wonderful doctor, and he found something he didn't like, and so immediately he sent me that afternoon to Mount Sinai. I had a scrape done, and the next day I got the call that changed my life from Dr. Eric, and his name was Montero as well. He's a great ear, nose, and throat specialist at Mount Sinai, and he said, "Look, I don't know how you tell you this, but straight out, you have cancer, and you got to get in to see us because it's very aggressive." So very quickly, the next day, I was checked in and signed to the radiation oncologist group, and they looked at it. And the normal treatment, by the way, men are getting throat cancer now between the ages of 55 and 65 at alarming rates. I was never a smoker, not a heavy drinker. And it's very much like breast cancer for female. It's our environment is doing that to us. But in any event, I was quickly assigned to a medical oncologist, and thank goodness I went to Princess Margaret, which is the best cancer hospital in Canada, one of the top 5 in North America, by the way. And the normal regime for throat cancer is radiation. So the cancer was 2.5 centimeters wide. It's on my tongue and my throat. And I went through 36 rounds of radiation, which was 36 weeks. They put a mask on you, and they put you into a CAT scan machine, and they aim scientifically radiation at the tumor with the whole intent that it will reduce it and shrink it. In my case, as I went through these, and they're very draining, you lose weight, radiation has a terrible effect on your swallowing, on your salivary glands, on your teeth, and also on your skin. So I went through that battle, and this was now in the fall of 2019. I got into a situation where it shrank a little bit. I was having trouble talking, but was allowed to go home. I had that Christmas that year at my home, where my voice was not functioning, and I had to still remember. I was able to talk a little bit, and I wrote a Christmas speech that, when I got through this, and that we would all go on a family vacation. Right after Christmas, things got worse. And so I went in for a checkup, and my radiation oncologist did not like what he saw. The tumor had grown from 2.5 to 6.5 centimeters, and immediately checked me in and put me on to the 18th floor at the Princess Margaret. Well, I didn't know then. I know now that you don't come back from the 18th floor. That's palliative care. So the tumor was seen as extremely aggressive and growing rapidly. So much so that 2 days later, after I was checked in, the ear, nose, and throat surgeon came in and said, he looked at my throat and said, "We don't like the look of this." The tumor had grown over my windpipe, and they did an immediate tracheotomy that afternoon. So now I had a trach in my throat, which is world-changing, life-changing. At the same time, I couldn't swallow food, so the next day I had to go in and have a G tube medically inserted into my stomach, because I had to get nutrients into me to keep me alive. So, all this to say, in a period of 2 months, 2.5 months, I was in palliative care on the 18th floor with a tube in my throat and a tube in my stomach, and getting fluid, both water and nutrients, through a drip. Every day I was given blood tests because they were monitoring the blood. And at one point I had to have a transfusion, and things were not looking very good. At that point in time, I'm studying all these people, because I'm studying, hey, who's on my team, as all entrepreneurs do. My job now, my mission was to live. I mean, I wanted to see my grandchild being born. And, I thought that I still had a lot to give. but my prognosis was not good. My medical team were telling me that, they couldn't operate. I had a friend from Philadelphia she was going to send a jet to pick me up and to get me to University of Penn Medical Hospital for a surgeon to go in and try to operate and take the tumor out. But my medical team at Princess Margaret said I was too weak to travel, so I was euchred. So the only choice I had was to change my medical team, because the prognosis they were giving me was bad. I mean, one doctor, Dr. Hasney, I'll never forget him. He said, "Get your affairs in order." And then told my brother at the elevator that I had 4 to 5 weeks to live. So that all happened in a span of several months. Now, what was helpful to me as I went through this is I have very strong faith, and I'm a Catholic, and by nature, don't go as much as I should, perhaps. But I really decided that I was going to have faith versus fear in my recovery. And I knew that I needed on my medical team someone who was more innovative, someone who would be bringing a new thought and a new process, because the existing process and precision doctors, both my radiation oncologist and my ear, nose, and throat, had kind of given up. And sometimes that happens in business. And so, what do you do? So I my family demanded a new look. And with being proactive in the Canadian healthcare system, I guess it works in some cases. And I was introduced to Dr. Lillian Siu, who brought in a new idea that was just coming off a trial at the time, called immunotherapy. Immunotherapy is the next thing in cancer treatments, where it goes in and opens your T cells, and they actually attack the cancer cells. And if your PDL scores, which is a way of measuring effectiveness, are strong, it has a very high success rate. It's very successful in lung cancer, but was new at the time to ear, nose, and throat. And so she brought it in, she signed off, got me fast-tracked on a trial. The normal process is I had to wait a month, but she said I would be dead in a month. And so we brought it in ahead of time. A day later, Dr. O'Hara came in and said, I want you to sign off on this paper, because the pain is going to get incredibly intense in the next week as the tumor closes in on your arteries. It's a very painful death, and we want to make sure that we have a plan to help you pass. And so I actually had to sign a paper saying if the pain got too intense, and I was on morphine, by the way, for over a month, that they would give me a needle and I would, I would pass. And so, when you're at the end of the rope, and so I'm at the cliff, I'm looking down, I'm saying, this is not looking good. A lot of things change, to be alive for the next Monday is, would be a blessing. And so, I did a lot of soul searching, as we all would in that situation. And fortunately, we went on the chemo, we went off of the chemo and radiation, and we went on to immunotherapy, and it started to work very well. All of a sudden, I got my hearing back. And by the way, in concert with all of this, right after I was told I had 4 to 5 weeks to live, I had to call my best friend in, Todd Finlayson, just a great man, owner operator of a bunch of McDonald's in the Toronto area. And I had to tell him, I said, look, Todd, this is too much of a message for my wife to do. I'd like you to do me a favor, and I want you to make my funeral plans, and also get me a burial plot, because I want that taken care of, so I can just start focusing all my efforts on recovery and not worry about the other parts to the business or to the process. And he did that. We had a couple of cheers, and that was done. So as the immunotherapy started to take its effects, slowly I got my ability to talk back. I got my hearing back. I was no longer writing messages. My energy came back, and my color came back, and the nurses, really, they called it a miracle. Now, I also, along the lines, had my parish priest, Dr. Father Laszlo from Holy Family in Whitby, just a wonderful man, work with me. And, as I reflect back on this, and I'm happy to do so, at first I was going to be pretty private, but, over the course of the last year, I've been, sharing the story, because I believe it was great science and my faith in God allowed me to get through this and live to see another day, another year. As I recovered through this, I really, started paying attention to, how all of us work with the people that are on our teams. Do we have the right teams? And I saw the way that the doctors were treating the nurses on my medical team, and I remember that. And I was on morphine, and I said at the time, when I get out of this, and I will, I'm going to donate my software and my training to new doctors at Princess Margaret, because they tend to have shitty people skills. And the nurses laughed, and coming out of it, they actually hired me for $1, and we've started a program now where we're using our analytics to help young doctors, young medical oncologists, be more self-aware, be aware of their impact and their communication style, because by doing that, there's a huge opportunity to build better teams. So as the good news is as the immunotherapy kicked in, I did that for a course of several weeks. I actually coughed up a tumor the size of a dollar or a loonie one day because I was sent home. And that was, wow, a huge signal. And then another one. And then I started, recovering, and was able to get back to, able to function well. But that took another 2 years of immunotherapy. All being said, here it is 4 years later. I'm back at work, loving Mondays, love each day of the week. And I really, look at this as a second chance. What would you do, leader out there, if you had a second chance at living? And I don't have to work. I've been blessed with, I kept most of my shares from Microsoft, by the way, at $13. I think they're over $3.90 now. But really, now taking that story, Ron, and thanks for asking, and saying, too many leaders out there get too stressed about the simple things, the minutia. Are they really working to create a better good? Are they really, the best versions of themselves at work? Are they jazzed to be at work? Do they have the right people that work for them? And putting together the right team, to execute on the mission that we have as leaders, as CEOs, is vital. If I hadn't made a change to my team, my medical team, I wouldn't be here with you today. I would not have been able to see my grandson being born, and then my granddaughter. I wouldn't be able to have seen my son Curtis get married, and so we miss a lot as leaders when we have the wrong people on our team. And a dream team really is made up of the right people to execute on your mission. And perhaps one of the lessons to the folks listening out there is that if you don't have the right team, don't be afraid to make a change, because it's probably the right thing for that person. It's not doing them any favors if they're not able to execute on the job to be done, and the team's not able to execute on the mission. In my case, thank God I was able to change my team lead to Dr. Lillian Siu, who saved my life.
Yeah, it's such a remarkable story, Dave. Congratulations on that second chance, right? And can you tell us a little bit more about what gave you the resolve to actually make a change on that team, and how did you do it?
Well, when I think most leaders are, I mean, to get to be a successful leader in Canada or the United States, you have to have had something. You had to have either the will, skill, or the hill. And when we look at, when leaders look at their teams, I think you have to be courageous. In my case, I had to be courageous, or I wouldn't be here today. And be courageous and bold to say, hey, this isn't working. I need to do a course correction. And in my situation, what changed me the most was I had more to give. I wasn't ready to give up. I, remember seeing my wife, who was there every day, driving in from Whitby to Princess Margaret. And after the prognosis of 4 to 5 weeks to live, I looked at her and I couldn't talk, but she looked in so despair, and my family were there, and I had to take care of them. And so if I wasn't around, there would be no one to take care of my team, my family team. And that meant too much to me. And so I put everything I could into, hey, I have to fix this. I have to take care of this. I have to own this. I have to be the one that takes charge somehow, some way, and be strong. And there were many days where it was tough to be strong, going from a CAT scan, to radiation treatment, to blood work, to tube feeds, to not being able to talk. The mental part, can go. And I read a lot. My favorite Psalm, Psalm 123, and that is something that kept me going as well. And so having faith in something um, that is beyond you um, gave me power.
That's amazing. And tell me more about Dr. Lillian Siu.
So her husband is Tac Mac. Tac Mac invented immunotherapy, a famous Canadian that no one knows about, but they should, at Stanford. And that immunotherapy work that he did is the ground for the COVID virus medicine, if you will, or the shot that we got is based on immunotherapy. So he, just a wonderful person. He was working with Lillian. Lillian was a researcher at University of Toronto. They got married, and Lillian became another Canadian success, where she is one of the best in the world in immunotherapy research, and runs a wonderful clinic in Toronto at Princess Margaret, world-renowned, teaches, and also inspires. She is very assertive. She's very tenacious, extremely focused, and extremely detailed. And so when she took over my case, she said famously, because after I recovered, I donated some money back to the hospital. And so we've been doing a little PR together. And I said, I had a 3% chance of living. She said, no, you had a 0% chance of living. So she's very direct and brisk. But she knows her stuff. And she brought in Nivolam immunotherapy. And that was the regime that I was on for 2 years that saved my life.
Yeah, it sounds like the right type of person to be leading your team in a obviously a very challenging situation. Like, that's phenomenal. And tell me a little bit more about, okay, what's different with Dave 2.0, right? You talked about second chance. What are some things that you are completely different now that you have that second chance?
It's hard to say, but think about this. If you were in a hospital bed, maybe you haven't, but I'm in a hospital bed for 35 days and I don't go out, I take a walk, I walk down the hall, but I really can't walk. And I learned to appreciate today the little things. So every day I get up and say, what do I have to look forward to? I think that a lot of times we get into our busy lives and we just keep going on this little gerbil wheel. And yeah, we make a lot of money and we drive the right cars. I had all that. I had 3 Mercedes. I had a toy Mercedes. I had an S580 brand new, house, cottage, 3 great kids, all with master's degrees. I had all that. But now I think about, what have I got to look forward to this day? What fun am I going to do? And one of my themes now is, how do I make fun happen? And that's safe fun, by the way. And that's really important, is that, how do I make fun for my employees? How do I make fun for my clients? I'm still working with clients on a daily basis. And how do I leave at the end of the day better than when we started? So I look forward to that. I think all of us have, and what I try to do is I have, something to look forward to, someone to love, someone who loves me, of course, and something to chase. And if we don't have those in combination, I found that life can get boring. And so Dave 2.0 is going to always have something to chase. And what to chase? That's myself, down the road. How much better can I be? I just finished writing a new book, From Hire to Inspire. It's on Amazon and it's in Indigo. And all the proceeds are going to Princess Margaret, by the way. And that was done in a way that I have to chase something. It's, good, not great. And so Dave 2.0 is trying to be the next level of great. I think it's selfish if leaders get comfortable. That's the most dangerous place for leaders. And it's the safest place. But Dave 2.0 is going to take more calculated risks to execute on my vision, which is, really building better bosses and making fun happen. So really simple, and but I don't get stressed out about it. very much anymore. I mean, when you've been to kind of the ends, not much can stress you. I mean, um, I don't drink and drive. I never did. I can't drink alcohol anymore, and maybe a sip, but um, there's other ways of enjoying yourself. And so, if you can imagine, the person that has immunotherapy that's been living the longest is 7 years. I'm 4. They don't know how long I'm going to live. I may only have 3 years left. I could have 20. But it's going to be a restriction that other people don't have. And so if my window is only 3 years, that's 1,200 days. Boy, that's a lot of time to enjoy and make a difference.
That's amazing. Just to say how you're making safe fun happen every day. Someone to love, someone you're gonna love, and as well as something to chase at. Never get comfortable. It's a pretty cool life philosophy. And it's funny. I met you, I don't know, probably about a year ago, and I think for me it was a phone call, and you were just very direct to the point, no wasting time. And at first I was like, this guy's a little bit crusty. Like that was my thought. But then when I actually met you and I saw, hey, you live every day with a mission, it was really clear to me. And I really started to appreciate the fact that there's no fluff. Let's get down to it. Let's make the best of today. Let's have fun along the way, but let's make a better world. And I absolutely love that you're donating all the proceeds and you're working with the doctors and nurses. That's amazing. So let's shift to predictive success.
Sure.
And tell us what that is to the average person.
So in 1997, I was at Microsoft and we were trying to build a great team. And Frank Clegg, the president, said to Frank Bella, my boss, hey, let's do this. And so we went to HR and we said, all right, what have you got to help us? These are hiring tests back then. And they said, well, we got DISCs, we got Hire, Myers-Briggs, so we got Colors, we got Hogan. But all of those are flavors of the day. They've been used once and they were left in the HR file. So we thought for a better, it must be something better out there. I had used a survey before that at a company called McBee Accounting Systems. And the company was called the Predictive Index from Boston, very sleepy company in Wellesley, Massachusetts. So we brought them in and we really found that the analytics were quick. They were very manager friendly and very accurate to identify, who could be a hunter for business, who was more technical, who would be better at writing code, who would be better at managing a team. And it transformed our financial services team from $11 million in sales to $147 million with a 82% contribution margin. Very successful. And in 2005, the opportunity to buy the rights for Canada became available. The gentleman who had it was retiring, John Watson. And so I went to Nancy Martini in Boston and asked her for the rights for Canada. And we came together with an agreement that allowed us to buy the rights from the publisher. And that's how we started. The name Predictive Success was created. And we started working, instead of going to the HR people, we went right to business guys, to the CEOs. And we started showing them, hey, you should be involved in the hiring, and the analytics will be helpful to you. You have financial numbers. Here are people numbers. This is a people operating system. And so the companies that started with us said, yeah, I mean, we had 10 the first year, very successful. We had a lot of case studies, and we were reducing turnover by up to 30%. And we were increasing sales from anywhere from 11 to 45%. And that started the ball rolling. Then we were endorsed by the HR associations in Ontario and then all provinces. I hired some associates across Canada, great people like Doug McCann in British Columbia, an ex-IKEA president. He started our practice and went to Western Canada. Doug is one of the best in the world now. And then Dave Osborne in Atlantic, ex-Manpower, started. And then we hired people in Ontario. Jason Taylor, ex-VP at Labatt's, for example. We also brought in Stephen Flower, an ex-executive from the manufacturing sector, and so forth. And so today we have over 1,000 clients. And we 2 years ago, we started in Quebec with Martin Foster and from hospitality. And so we started very early going to the leaders. We got attention from them. We got a lot of their referrals. And then we've been selected to speak at conferences. And of late, we speak at CEO conferences. That's how we met, Ron, through McKay, but also at Tech and chef CEO in Quebec. And that's brought us a lot of success and attention, so much so that now we're bringing analytics to non-profits, so social profit companies. And we do a lot of work with Children's Aid Society, for example. We do a lot of work with hospitals as an extension, and because they have equal issues. And the whole principle here is hiring with analytics. Golden gut when you meet people, plus analytics gives us better outcomes, and that's led to our success.
Okay, can you give me a couple of examples just to paint the picture?
Sure. So one really fast one was, we were hired by Gordon Foods. Gordon Foods is a national company, and they wanted to see a model of what kind of people they would need for sales. And so we created a model in Western Canada of what business development people needed to be like. We studied their top performers, and there was a repeatable pattern. They all had more energy. They all were assertive. They also had a high level of persuasion. They all had great intensity, and they didn't get stuck in the details. They also had the ability to adapt with the environment. And the number one thing that we saw, as we see with a lot of sales teams, is they had great empathy, not sympathy, because that sucks margin out of the business. And so we created a model for them. They started hiring to that model, and they had about a 13.5% increase in sales from year one to year two. Very successful, and that was taken nationwide. Another one, so sales is one that we do quite a bit. Salesforce.com has become a client. I love the work that we're doing with Calix. Calix is an ex-Microsoft leader, Michael Weening, wonderful CEO. And he has increased, they sell cable across the United States. Their big mission is to connect the rural America with cable, and wonderful mission. And he has used the predictive index software to create a very dynamic, innovative team. But sales have been up for his team 25.5% over the last few years by following a model. Another fun one would be the work that we did with Amazon. Amazon's had a problem in Western New York a few years ago. They hired drivers and they wouldn't show up after the third day. Well, they were hiring people around that would interview really well, very persuasive, but they didn't have enough detail. So they were missing and having, a lot of bad delivery experiences. And so we convinced them to hire a model completely different. The model was very detailed, very sequential, very methodical, very patient, very technical, and not assertive. And so what we call a specialist profile. And by doing that, they increased the show up rate on day 3 by just over 20%. And that was the mission. This is for a job that pays $3 or $4 over minimum wage. And that was the mandate. So it depends on the job to be done. Oftentimes CEOs have 3 problems. One, I want to increase revenues. Okay, well, that's easy. Let's study the profiles that can do that. Number 2, I want to reduce cost. Well, do we have the right people? Because people leave the leader, they don't leave the company. So we look at those. And then the last one is, I want to become, reducing risk. What is my risk out there? Because also with analytics, and our suite in particular, we can survey the entire company and tell you who's a flight risk, whose resume is on the street, and what boss is managing poorly. What boss is a bully boss. And so analytics, when used properly, can really be insightful for the CEO more today than ever.
Tell me a little bit more about that. So you're saying you can tell who's a flight risk and you can tell who's a bully boss. Like, how do you get to those conclusions?
Well, what happens in the survey that we have, our analytics, it gives us 3 views of the person. And what happens in the survey is it tells us what the employee's view is, which is the most important, of how they have to cope or change when they adjust coming into work. Talk about a scary Monday. If you've got someone whose core personality is very entrepreneurial, very assertive, persuasive, likes variety, is very informal, and then they're put into a job or micromanaged by their boss into being subservient, so much less assertive, much more what we call technical, much more slower to change and methodical and extremely detailed. That is, there's 2 causes. Number 1, they're in the wrong role. But if they're in that role for a period of time and that's happening, it's the boss or the supervisor that's pushing that A down, that assertiveness down, and micromanaging. If you drive that too low, that's called resignation. They can't do that too long. And so people that hate Mondays the most, it'd be an interesting story to do, would be those people that their personality is a complete mismatch to the requirements of the job
Hmm.
or how they're being managed at work.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like, and you look, you did the survey with my CEO group, and it takes like 15, 20 minutes max to complete. So it's very easy to use. But you actually did an assessment of all of us, including me. And so my story, finance professional for 20 plus years, and now I've got my own business. So how much do people change on that scale, right? So if you took an assessment of 10 years ago versus now, what would you predict would be the results?
I think you're happier now, to be honest with you, because, your profile is what we call the individualist. So very creative, assertive, wonderful methodical orientation, but you don't like to get stuck in the weeds. So you can sell the big picture. This is like a Steve Jobs profile, not to pump your ego up, but that's what you have. And you were in a job back then that was, very different. I wasn't around then, but job that was extremely detailed, not a lot of change. You're not able to make the creative changes that you like. And in the current job, I just see the joy in what you do. I mean, I have the pleasure, I watch people for a living as well. I can tell you're jazzed by what you do because you can be creative, you're setting the agenda, you are able to add a technical expertise to what you do. And so people do change. What changes the most is what we call the self-concept, how I need to act around others. That's changing all the time. What is core, though, and our research goes back 65 years at the predictive index, is that by the age of 19, your core personality has been developed. We can tell at that point, your core level of assertiveness, your core level of persuasiveness, your core level of patience, and your core level of detail. How you adjust at work will always change in most cases. In some cases, it doesn't. And the analytics will pick that up. Some people out there, this is something we can avoid with analytics. If you ever hired someone and they're very stubborn or tough to change, you look at the predictive index and it'll be congruent. It'll be all the exact same. And those people can be wonderful employees if they're in jobs that fit them behaviorally. But if they're in jobs that don't fit them, so the job model is off, they're tough to train, tough to change, and tend to be drama kings, drama queens at work. So we're probably best to do the right thing and promote those folks to customer. Bit of a joke.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Even if I reflect on my experience, so I was in a finance box, so to speak, and I had no idea that I had entrepreneurial muscles or I could start my business. So it's interesting how my next question would be like, have you thought about or have you worked with schools to help high school kids or university kids really try to understand themselves a little better? Because I had no recollection until my 40s
Right.
that it was even possible.
Yeah, I did my MBA at Queens, and we go back and work with the BCom kids at Queens pretty well every year, at least pre-COVID. We're going to get back there. And what we do is we donate the software to those kids, those college university folks in year 3 to help them understand. As far as high school, we probably should. The tool is designed for entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs will do the predictive index on their children, and we advise that because some of them are involved in succession. It would be great. I mean, I think we should. We just haven't tackled the high school market yet. Colleges, yes. We teach at Queens. We teach at U of T. We've taught at several across Canada, Acadia, at UBC, in the HR classes. But Ron, you make a good point. I mean, it would be great to do this. I mean, one of our clients who graduated from UCC, I can't tell you his name, he's quite famous. He said to us a few years ago, my dad always wanted me to be a doctor. And he was what we call a maverick profile. So very assertive, very impatient, not much detail. And you don't see that pattern as doctors because, we do a lot of work with 5 leading cancer hospitals in the United States now. And so we have a lot of doctor profiles. And he said, if I had this profile, I could have shown it to my dad and said, Dad, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be an entrepreneur. And it would have solved a lot of problems. And he actually bought a license a few years back for Upper Canada College to use with their grade 12s. So it's a fascinating idea, Ron. We probably should do more of it.
Yeah, it reminded me of a story. So I was talking to my son's dentist, and he was telling me how his son basically did dental school many years and then just came to the realization it wasn't him. And now he's actually running a restaurant. And it took a lot of mental strain and on the whole family in order to get there. Lots of pain, lots of fights. And that education for both the parent and the child is so important to say, look, we're all individuals. And just because my dad's a doctor doesn't mean I'm suited. You could be, but not
Yeah.
necessarily. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. Well, we know what doctors look like. I mean, a lot of our clients, we have now, last year in 2023, we did 323,000 surveys in Canada. So we have a lot of data and we study trends. We study best sales teams. We now have a category on medical oncologists, what do they look like? What do project managers look like? And so all of those patterns are pretty consistent. And to try to take your child and make them into something they're not long term, it's not healthy. It's not the right thing to do. And that's not going to make fun happen. And that's going to create, people that hate Mondays, because if they're in jobs behaviorally that don't suit them, my God, that's a terrible waste of it, time, talent, and treasure.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I want to push a little deeper on this. So you said doctors have a very consistent profile. So how wide is that band? Knowing, look, we're still individuals and we all have our different approaches. So how do you assess that? Like, I don't want to put everybody in the same box type of thing.
Yeah. So again, good news story. When I was, at Princess Margaret, we started talking about what we do. And, when I got out of it, they actually said, well, it would be good. We have a program for medical oncologists, and we don't teach, at this point, self-awareness. So would you mind doing it? So we started hosting a program. And so we have a lot of data. And the doctors that gravitate to oncology tend to be, as you would think, very detailed, very sequential, very technical. Some are assertive, some not, depending. Very focused in some cases. That tends to be what we see in our data, orientation. And so they may not have the best bedside manner because they've never been taught how. And so we help them to become self-aware. And we're getting great scores on it. Our doctors, the ones in the course, and this now is expanded to 5 cancer hospitals in the United States. It's just very rewarding. And we love doing it. I still remember one doctor who had come to Canada and was struggling. And when we looked at the predictive index, she had no detail. She was very persuasive. And she should have been really in a political role. But yet she was stuck in clinic and doing research. And she hated it. And so we had a discussion, and she came to tears, and she goes, first time in my life, someone has understood me. And now I know what I have to do. And so she left. Can you imagine that? After all that training, went to the UN and is now a political advocate in Europe, and left a research post in Toronto and sent me an email. She's much happier. And so it really, from my experience, and again, this is a guy that's gone to the wall. Life is too short to be in a job that you don't enjoy, doesn't jazz you, doesn't motivate you, and doesn't align with your core behaviors. And too many of us, chase the money, chase the prestige, do what our parents tell us to do, or don't know what to do. And so, when we look at analytics, in our case, it's the predictive index, but there's many out there. It gives us a better foundation to say, what am I good at? What could I be good at? And what am I doing now?
Yeah, no, that's so brilliant. And I love the work that you're doing with hospitals and universities to change the world in your way, in a very quantifiable way. And that story is just beautiful. A doctor who's now doing some great work with the UN and loving their Mondays. And interestingly enough, a lot of people talk about retirement. And in my new phase of life, I couldn't care less if I retire or not because I love what I'm doing. And I get the sense you do as well. Like you're changing your lives as you go.
Yeah, like last week I was in Naples, Florida. My wife and I are thinking of we've been blessed. We have the means. We paid off our houses and our cottages and our rental properties. I mean, we have the money. So we're looking at buying a house in Naples and right on the beach. And day 2, I look at Patty and she looks at me and she goes, "I'm bored. You're bored? Yeah. We can't do this the rest of our lives." So I'm not sure we're going to buy a house in Naples anymore. We got back on Saturday. I said, "Do you want to go to the St. Patrick's Day parade?" This is just yesterday. And yeah, so we both dressed in costumes and went down there. and it had a great day. Um, that's life, right? That's saying,
Amazing.
hey, what do you want to do today? How do you want to make fun? How do you want to make safe fun? And how are you making a difference? When our hospital, had issues hiring a research assistant, I said to our finance officer, I said, let's donate some money. So we donate $100,000, $50,000 a year for, it'll be for 10 years. And that is going towards paying for an immunotherapy research assistant from all over the world. They're coming to Princess Margaret, but they have to have the right PI. They have to be detailed and analytical. And so I think the ways that we give back is going to be part of our retirement as leaders. I mean, I think many entrepreneurs retire too early. They get bored and they waste their energies. And I think that, all of us should be thinking about, what am I going to look forward to? Because it's not sitting on the beach every day. I tell you, I got bored after the third day, and you can't golf every day. So how do we all use our time, talent, and treasures for, your 2.0, whatever that may be, if it's retirement
Yes.
or what have you.
Amazing. So how can people find out more about predictive success?
Well, yeah, thanks for the time today, by the way, Ron. And so I listened to your podcast and they're great. We're available online at www.predictivesuccess.com. And there are offices right across Canada. We have offices in the United States to our Buffalo office, but reach out to us. And what we do with leaders through the McKay CEO Forum, Ron, as you know, but also I'm going to extend it to your podcast members, is you can do a trial of your team, which is, what I did with the hospital. Let's look at your team. Maybe you have 5 or 6 leaders out there. And if you talk to Alyssa Schaefer on my team, so her email is ashafer, ASHAVER @predictivesuccess.com. She'll set up for you, based on being a podcast member, listener, a complimentary trial where we'll run the analytics on 3 to 5 of your leaders, and we'll tell you what your team looks like. And does that team align with your vision? So that's our gift to your listeners, and we would be happy to work with them. And I want to thank everybody for investing in themselves for this this podcast. And Ron, thank you for creating this. I love the title. Make sure that all of us create a path where we can love Monday and not dread it.
Yeah, Dave, thank you. I mean, your story is so inspiring on so many different levels, and it's funny how you and I have, become friends now. We enjoy working together and changing people's Mondays. I think it's common for both of us, but your story of changing your team and the inspiring people around you, Dr. Siu, and people who truly want to change the world is just so inspiring. And I'm actually going to go back and listen to this a few times, Dave, because there's so much wisdom in what you said. And Dave 2.0 is changing the world. So congratulations on that. And all the best to you. Let's keep in touch.
Thank you. I think we all can. I mean, everybody has a story, and a lot of us are courageous when we're pushed to the wall, and that's what makes us great leaders. So thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Dave.